Hello children, welcome back. This is the continuation of lesson 1, evolution of computers, and in today's video we are going to learn about different generations of computers and type of computers. Now we all know that the evolution of the present day computers are commonly classified into generations of computers. Now, in each generations, it resulted into some of the changes according to say the increase in speed, storage capacity, reliability and accuracies, and the decrease in the cost and the size of the computer. So let us go through different generations of computers. Now, the first generation computer, that is from 1946 to 1959. So this is the figure of the first generation computer. From here you can make out how large the first generation computer used to be. You need one whole room for the installation process. The consumptions of the power was very high, and you can see that some of the things that has been reflected on the screen, we call this as a vacuum tubes. Now, the first generation computers were made using several vacuum tubes and were the fastest calculating devices of that time. Now, vacuum tube, you can consider the vacuum tubes with the present day processor in the CPU, like say core processors that we use in our machines nowadays. Now, vacuum tube is a delicate glass device that can control and amplify the electronic signal. Now, machine and assembly languages were used in the first generation computer. The data stores were in the form of the magnetic tapes, and the outputs we used to get it into a form of a printout in a paper. So ENIAC, that is electronic numerical integrator and calculator, belong to the first generation computers. So the examples of first generation computers were UNIVAC, that is universal automated computers, and ENIC, that is electronic numerical integrator and calculator. Now see, you can go through the figure here that these are the vacuum tubes that were used in the first generation computers. Now, so you can see that not a one vacuum tubes but hundreds and hundreds of vacuum tubes were used in the first generation computers. So it has some of its drawback, or what we can call as a disadvantage. So what are the disadvantages of the first generation computer? You can see the size factor. It is very large in size, and comparatively it has small storage capacity and slow speed. It has high power consumption. As I have already said, it needs a large installation area, and thousands of vacuum tubes used in the computer emitted a lot of heat, and the tubes used to burn out frequently, and so the replacement of the tubes were very costly. Now let us move forward. Second generation computer, that is from 1959 to 1964. So you can see the figure of a second generation computer here. Slowly what happened is the size of the computers gets decreased as we move to different generations, and the processors that were used in the second generation computers were called transistor, transistor, transistor. And so this is the figure of a transistor. The output you get in second generation computers were in the form of a printout, okay, and the language that were used in the second generation computers, say we can call it some of the high level languages were used in the second generation computers, like Fortran, COBOL, BASIC, and many other. So the second generation computers use transistors, which were smaller and more reliable than the vacuum tubes. The computers were smaller, faster, and cheaper than the first generation computer. It contained all the components of the modern day computers. That's why programming language came into use, and as I have already said, some of the programming languages like Fortran, COBOL, and BASIC were used in the second generation computer. They generated less heat, and the maintenance was also easier. So some of the examples of second generation computers were IBM 1400, IBM 350 series, where IBM means International Business Machine. Now let us move forward to the third generation computers. So it was from 1964 to 1970. So these are some of the images of third generation computer, and in third generation computers the processor used were IC, or what we call as a integrated circuit, that is IC technology were used on the third generation computers as a processor. They were smaller in size and they generate less amount of heat than the second generation computers. They had greater speed and increased storage capacity. Now, in third generations, the data's outputs were in the form of a monitor. Okay, so basically, you don't need a printout of the data output. It can be stored inside the storage capacity and can be displayed through the help of a monitor. So they were more accurate. Difficult programs could be run together. Some of the examples were IBM System 360, Apple I, and Altair. Now let's move to the fourth generation computer, that is from 1971 to the present day computers. So you can see some of the images here, and the microprocessor is the chip that is used to run the fourth generation computers. So the technology used here is LSI, that is large scale integration technology. It has greater computing power than all those generations of computers. It has greater storage capacity. It was much more accurate than other computers and can be linked together, or it can be networked. So these are some of the features of the fourth generation computer. Cray 1, 2, Apple second VEX 9000s. These are some of the computers of the fourth generations. Now let us move to the fifth generation computers, that is from 1981 to future. Okay, so yeah, artificial intelligence comes under the fifth generation of computers. So these are some of the example of fifth generation computers. You can see the artificial intelligence, as I have said, it comes on the fifth generation computer. So it uses extremely large scale integration. It has a very high speed and the storage capacity. High speed logic and memory chips were used. It has the ability to carry out sophisticated operations, and it can understand human speech, recognize the patterns like face and other complex images, like the one that we use to put as a screen lock in our smartphones and all. Now let us move forward to the next slide. Now, classifications of computers. So computers can also be classified according to the size, okay, according to speed, storage capacities, and the processing power. So accordingly, there are different types of computers like say microcomputer, mini computer, mainframe computers, and supercomputers. Now let us begin with the microcomputers. We can call the microcomputers as our personal computers. So under the microcomputers come desktop, laptop, notebook, hybrid tablets, and smartphone. So all these computers are known as a microcomputers. So these are comparatively smaller in size and it costs less. They are usually designed for personal use, therefore they are also called as personal computers, and they are mainly used in homes, schools, offices, shops, and bank. Next is mini computers. So mini computers are slightly larger than the microcomputers. They are high processing speed. So these are the example of mini computers. So they have a powerful processing powers. And as I have said, these computers are bigger in size than the microcomputers. They have high processing speed and they are much more costlier than the microcomputers. Several users can use it at the same time. So they are basically used in the banks, universities, and in big organizations. Programmed data processor 8. This is one of the example of mini computers. Now next is mainframe computers. So these are some of the figures of the mainframe computers that equivalent to the size of refrigerators or a cupboard, and these are one of the powerful computers used nowadays. So they're big in size with large memory and high speed. More than 100 users can use a mainframe computers simultaneously. They're very expensive and they can be used in the large business organizations, universities, banks, scientific laboratories, for the ticket reservations of airlines and railways. So basically it is used for the networking purpose. So IBM Jet Series, PDP-10 and System Jet-10, these are some of the examples of a mainframe computers. Now finally, the super computers. So these are the example of some of the supercomputers. So they are the most powerful computer with a huge processing speed. They can process trillions of instructions per second. So from here you can make it how fast the supercomputer is. These computers are used for weather forecasting, for the space research for satellite controls, used in the very big hospitals for diagnosing the diseases. And some of the example of supercomputers are Cray 1, Cray 2, Forum 8000 are some of the example of supercomputer. So this is all in today's content, and in this video we have learned the different generations of computers and different types of computers according to the size of the computer, according to the speed, according to the cost. So this is all in today's video. Thank you, children.